Hey, welcome to World Entertainment. Terminator Zero, remember that on Netflix? Well, it's not getting a season 2 because Netflix has pulled the plug and, for lack of a better word, terminated it. Yep, it's being cancelled. Now, what's interesting is, you would think this only came out a year ago. It came out in 2024. So, the fact that an animated series, up to this point, we heard nothing about more of it happening, really shows you the struggles that I think is truly a problem now with streaming. Like, if you can't even get an animated series moving quicker, it really says, like, they're not in a great place. But anyway, let's see what happened here. So, Terminator Zero cancelled at Netflix, and this is confirmed by Mattson Tomlin, who wrote the bloody thing. So, of course, he is one of the co-writers for The Batman Part 2. So, Terminator Zero has officially been cancelled at Netflix. Series creator Mattson Tomlin confirmed the news on social media, revealing that while the anime earned strong critical and audience reception, not enough people tuned in to justify continuing the show. So what he wrote on X is quite telling, that there was actually a plan for this show. It wasn't just a case of, well, they did one series and see where it was going to go after that. He had planned 3 seasons. So this is what he wrote on X, saying, "It was cancelled. The critical and audience reception to it was tremendous, but at the end of the day, not nearly enough people watched it. I would have loved to deliver on the future war I had planned in seasons 2 and 3, but I'm also very happy with how it feels contained as is." So he had planned seasons 2 and 3, and it was going to involve the future war. Now, it does suck that season 2 and 3 has been axed, because the show was a good show. There was people who didn't like it, obviously, but I liked it. I reviewed it. I thought it was actually good. The animation style, I thought, was quite unique. It was this integrated 2D version mixed with 3D, and even some live action type of stuff every now and again seemed to be in there. It was very unique. I thought the story was a good story as well. Very different, because it was set in Japan, and the Terminator had to improvise how to get people, because only the police in Japan had weapons, like guns. So guns were not accessible to the Terminator. So I thought that was interesting. But what was also interesting is what apparently he also had planned, because apparently he had planned to introduce Arnie's T-800 in future episodes. So whether or not that would have been the case, I don't know. Whether or not Arnold would have actually, voiced it or anything like that, it's very possible. It is very possible. But this continued anyway, saying Tomlin made it clear the decision came down to viewership numbers, which, of course, that is one of the big problems you do have with anime. I even spoke about this regarding Predator Killer for Killers. Is it's very hard to convince an adult audience, because this was an R-rated show as well. It's very hard to convince an adult audience to move over and watch anime. That is an issue. You put up, hey, look, it's an animated thing of the property you love. They're going to always kind of go, yeah, I'm a bit hesitant to check that out. And that's ultimately where it comes down to, not enough people watched it. You think, though, with the amount of people who did watch it, that gave it the very high reviews, you think that would have made Netflix happy enough to continue. But depending what the numbers are, and of course we don't know what the numbers are, they never tell us the numbers. So according to him, Netflix supported the series creatively and gave him tremendous creative freedom. However, the show was described as expensive and time-consuming to produce. Without a large enough audience, Netflix couldn't justify moving forward. Well, you could just cut down on a lot of that type of stuff. It's weird, by the way, to hear like that it was incredibly expensive and time-consuming when it's an animated thing. So it's interesting to hear that, but just scale it back. Just say, okay, we see what you did. If you've already got stuff planned out, here's the budget we can give you, and try and work around that. So I don't really think that's much of a, we just couldn't afford. Especially, this is a company who's trying to buy Paramount. with billions of dollars. So to sit there and try and say it wasn't justified, can't afford it, yeah, that's not right. So Tomlin explained as well, saying the only way they could justify it was if the audience showed up for it, and they just didn't. That admission confirms the cancellation wasn't due to creative differences but purely business, which that part does make sense. You know, like, again, it depends what the viewership numbers were to maybe what they were expecting. So Tomlin also revealed he had mapped out an ambitious 5-season arc. He had written all of season 2 and outlined most of season 3. The planned storyline would have expanded deeper into the future war, a core element longtime Terminator fans have wanted to see properly explored. He even hinted that the series final for the full run was part of the original pitch and something he was particularly proud of. Now, that part is what's really mind-boggling, is that the final episode for how the show was to end after season 5, by the sounds of things, is what he pitched to Netflix and what they greenlit the show on. And now they're not even going to see it come true. So they greenlit a show on the basis of how it would end and pulled the plug before they even wanted to get to the end. That's really, really strange to do. But you can see he already had season 2 written and half of season 3 already mapped out. So Netflix offered Tomlin the opportunity to produce 2 or possibly 3 additional episodes to wrap up the story. He declined, believing the story he wanted to tell required a longer arc and that the season 1 final worked as a contained ending. So to justify Netflix a bit there, they did turn around and say, look, we'll give you at least 2 to 3 episodes to finish the story. Like, end it how you want it to end. But he was like, thanks for the offer, but the problem is it would need the full arc to wrap it up properly. So he said no. So despite the cancellation, Tomlin left the door open to return. Maybe I will return to that world in a different form, he said, adding that he generally loves the franchise and found it gratifying that many fans connected with his approach, which I think is the idea that he did something different and went to a different place and didn't focus on the Connors. So set in Japan in 1997, just before Judgment Day, the series follows Skynet becoming self-aware and launching a war against humanity. A soldier from the future travels back in time to protect scientist Malcolm Lee, who is developing a rival AI system that could stop Skynet. As a deadly Terminator hunts him down, Malcolm and his 3 children are caught in the middle of the fight to change humanity's fate. The AI thing that he invented was an interesting take because it ultimately became a newer version of Skynet. Now, what's interesting as well is hearing him say maybe someday he will continue it in some other form. There's 2 options for that. One is that other form will be the next movie that James Cameron is meant to be writing. Cameron, I don't think particularly wants to write it, but I think he's contracted, and I think it's through Skydance, to actually write a new script. I think, now I could be very wrong in that, but I think that was one of the deals he made when he kind of came back with Dark Fate, was that he was going to have to do another one. Maybe he could hand half of that over to Tomlin and he could work in something completely different, because we know James Cameron doesn't want to focus on the Connors either, and he doesn't want to focus on Arnie's T-800. He even flat out said, yeah, Arnold's not going to be in the next one. Or could Tomlin actually be talking about maybe some other place, like a Paramount Plus, now that it's under Skydance and stuff, will pick up the series and you get season 2 through them. I don't know how that would work, with whatever way the rights might be working with Netflix, or does Netflix only have the rights to the first season? Was that all they took? Don't know. So, but that could be what he's talking about, that maybe there'll be an option there for another network, maybe Amazon Prime or something, that could go, well, we'll pick it up. I would like to see his story continue, especially if it goes into the future war. I did, again, enjoy that first season. I thought it was quite unique, quite different. Yeah, a bit jarring at times, but at the same time, I really did enjoy it, and I would have liked to have seen that story continue, or at least where he goes with the overall story. But what do you guys think? Would you have liked to see more? Do you think he could actually continue the story in actual movie form, live action movie form? Or do you think the likes of Skydance at Paramount will pick up this show? Let me know what you think, and would you have liked to have seen a 5-season story with this? And with that, I shall leave it there for this one. So do like and share and subscribe and all that good stuff. Cheers, and I shall catch you in the next one.